Jon Rennie is the co-founder, president, and CEO of Peak Demand Inc., a manufacturer of critical components for electrical utilities. He's a former U.S. Navy nuclear submarine officer who made 7 deployments during the end of the Cold War. Prior to starting Peak Demand, he led 8 manufacturing businesses for 3 global companies. He's the author of 3 best-selling leadership books and the host of the Deep Leadership podcast. And before we start the episode, a quick word from our sponsor, Deep Wealth and the Deep Wealth Mastery Program. Here's Bill, a graduate, who says, the Deep Wealth Mastery Program has transformed the KPIs we're using to accelerate growth and profits. Or how about Emery, who says, and I love this, and I quote, the Deep Wealth Mastery Program helped me create the right mindset for both growing my business and later my future exit. I now know what questions to ask, what to do and not to do, which is priceless. The team and I have found dangerous skeletons and gaps that we're now addressing due to the Deep Wealth Program. Today, our actions have a massive ROI. Absolutely love that. And now, speaking of growth and adding value, check out what Bruce says. And I quote, as a business owner, I'm always looking for new programs, systems, CEO peer groups, and strategies to improve my business. Hands down, the Deep Wealth Mastery Program is the absolute best. I'm both growing my business and preparing for a future exit at the same time. It doesn't get any better. And I got to tell you, as I hear these testimonials, this is exactly why I do what I do. My mission, the team's mission here at Deep Wealth, is to literally change the social fabric of society, one business owner at a time and one liquidity event at a time. The Deep Wealth Mastery Program, it's the only one based on a 9-figure deal. And that deal, that was my deal. You know my story. I said no to a 7-figure offer. I created a system that we now call Deep Wealth Mastery, and that's exactly what helped myself and my business partners welcome from a different buyer, a different offer, a 9-figure deal. So if you're interested in growing your profits, preparing for a future liquidity event, whether that's 3 years away or 33 years away, and if you want to optimize your post-exit life, Deep Wealth Mastery is for you. Please email success@deepwealth.com. Again, that's success, SUCCESS, at deepwealth.com. We'll send you all the information about the Deep Wealth Mastery Program, otherwise known as the Scale for Ultimate Sales System. Better yet, why not hop on a complimentary strategy call? We'll see where you are at your business and what's standing between you and your financial independence and your dreams. So that's where you want to be. You want to be with other successful business owners, entrepreneurs, and founders just like you who are looking to create market disruptions. Whether you're a startup, whether you've been in business for 3 or 4 decades, whether you're manufacturing, whether you're high tech, SaaS, low tech, whatever the case may be, come on in and network with other business owners, with other businesses just like you, because they all want to lock in their financial freedom and enjoy both success and fulfillment. Again, the 90-day Deep Wealth Mastery Program, it has your name on it. All you need to do is take the next step. Please send an email to success@deepwealth.com. Deep Wealth Nation, welcome to another episode of the Deep Wealth Podcast. And you know me, I love my rhetorical questions. Would you love to take your company to the next level? Would you love to have that lifestyle where your company's running without you? And I'm sure you said yes to both of those. Let me ask you another question. How's your leadership and how's the leadership of your team? Do you want to ramp it up a notch or two? And I'm sure you're saying yes to that. Well, you're in for a real treat. We have a very special guest today. Jon, welcome to the Deep Wealth Podcast. An absolute pleasure to have you with us. There's always a story behind the story, Jon. So what's your story? What got you from where you were to where you are today?
Hey, it's great to be here. I did time in the military. I spent 5 years after college in the Navy. I was a submarine officer in the U.S. Navy. I love that. I did 22 years working in corporate, and I worked for 3 global companies where I ran 8 different manufacturing businesses. And then 9 years ago, I said, I'm done with it. I'm done with working for other people, started my own business. And for the past 9 years, we've been running a manufacturing company here in North Carolina, supplying parts and components to electric utilities. And it has been one of the most exciting things I've ever done. And I think for me, my story was I started out with a passion, a dream, which was to be an officer on a nuclear submarine. I was that weird kid that when they asked you what you wanted to do when you grow up, I said I wanted to be an officer on a submarine. And when, like a lot of people want to be a fireman or a policeman or what have you, I said submariner early on, and I did it. And I was able to do it. It takes a lot of effort to go from the idea of I want to be a submariner to become one. But I did it. And then when I eventually got out of the military, I was something like 24 years old. with no future plan for my life. So I had achieved all my dreams at 24 years old. So what do you do next? I think a lot of college athletes find themselves there where their whole life is a particular sport. They play their final game as a senior in college. They don't make it to the pros. Now what do? It would spend all your hopes and dreams. And I think I was in that situation. And like many veterans, I went to work in the corporate world, just got a job. I was an engineer. I had an engineering background. So I started doing design engineering. I was an associate design engineering for a major corporation. And I had a cubicle in the back corner of the design department where the lights didn't quite work. And I got an old computer and it gave me a stapler. And that's where I started my career. And 5 years later, I was running one of their manufacturing businesses. So I was able to figure out corporate life pretty quick and was able to then start running manufacturing companies. But it really took me about 7 years before I really figured out what I wanted to do. And in my corporate life, I would turn around struggling manufacturing companies. So that was what I was. I was the guy that went there whenever we had a bad business. They sent me in to help turn that situation around. So I did that for 22 years. And then I just got tired of fixing other people's problems. I wanted to fix my own problems. I wanted to do it on my own. And I also saw that I couldn't quite lead the way I wanted to lead in corporate. And there was a lot of rules and mandates and I just got tired of the rules, I think. And so I decided that it was time for me to try to do it on my own. And so, yeah, that's a bit of my story, the story behind the story. And I've been doing that for 9 years as an entrepreneur. And in that time, I've written some books. I started a podcast because part of my mission now is to sort of teach some of the leadership lessons I learned along the way to the younger generation. I also teach college part-time because I really enjoy teaching younger people and younger managers, younger leaders, some of the principles I learned throughout my career.
I love that story. And Deep Nation, go to the show notes. It's all there. The podcast, the books, his backstory. It's easy. It's a point and click. And firstly, Jon, like we were saying offline, thank you so much for your dedication, for the services that you went into for the country and doing what you did. And my goodness, there's so much that we're going to delve into. But I want to ask you this. When you look back at your trajectory and you walked us through very eloquently where you were and how you got to where you are today, I mean, my goodness, you're on a U.S. Navy nuclear submarine. You're an officer there. So how was that in terms of shaping the magnificent leader that you become today when you look back at that first experience in the U.S. Navy?
Yeah, I think the submarine is a very unique military asset. And I don't think I didn't think I understood it fully till later on in life. But if you imagine what we did is we would leave typically our deployments were about 100 days. So we'd leave for 100 days and we would operate independently. So we weren't working with any other assets, military assets. So we were hundreds of miles from the nearest base. We were hundreds of feet below the surface, and we had a common enemy, and that was the ocean. The ocean didn't care if we lived or died. The ocean wanted to crush us like a tin can, send us to the bottom of the sea, right? So our job was to keep ourselves safe. And also our adversary at the time was Russia. Of course, we had the Soviet Union. We were in the middle of the Cold War. So we had the ocean and we had the Soviets to worry about. And we realized that we depended on each other as a crew. We needed each other, right? So there was a shared vulnerability, right? We were all very much in a situation where if one thing went wrong, we would all perish. But we also had a shared responsibility as well to effectively operate the submarine in a manner that we would be able to conduct our mission and get home safely. So I learned pretty quick that that leadership is about the people and the mission. And those are essential, especially as an entrepreneur and in my corporate life. I learned that those two things are essential. I see some people talk about leadership and say, well, it's all about people. And I think that's great until you go out of business. And then it's not great for the people, right? And then some people will say, well, it's all about the mission. And then until you hurt your people so bad that they leave you and you can't keep good talent and keep good people. So it isn't just about the mission. It isn't just about the people. And what I learned in my days underwater was it's about the mission and the people. And if you can imagine the tight quarters in a submarine, the people that worked for me were next to me every day, 24/7, right? There was no break. So I got to know them very well. They got to know me very well. And so there was an authenticity behind my leadership. So they knew when I meant something, they knew when I was serious. They knew when I was having a good time and having a joke. I knew when they were serious. I knew when they were upset because I knew them. I learned very early on that you can't lead people you don't know. And part of leadership, especially as an entrepreneur, we start our companies off, maybe we're a solo entrepreneur, and then eventually we have a team around us. And we better know our people, especially when you're a small company. Say you have 10 employees, one person is 10% of your workforce. So you better make sure you hire right, that you motivate correctly, and that you've got the right resource, because 10% of your workforce is that one person right now. And so I think what I learned on a submarine, this idea of you have to know your people to lead your people, really helped me in my career in corporate and in my time as an entrepreneur. So those lessons, they're embedded in my DNA at this point.
John, as you're talking about that, you're actually taking me back in your book. And again, Deep Wealth Nation, go to the show notes, pick up the book, I Have the Watch. This is John's first book, Becoming a Leader Worth Following. And in there, it's so often patronized and people talk about it, but they really don't get it. You talk specifically about the importance of respect and then showing you care. And I know particularly new founders, entrepreneurs, business owners, well, I've got the title. I'm the founder. I'm automatically going to get that respect. And that's all I really need to do is show up with that title. And it couldn't be further from the truth. What would you want us to know about the importance of respect and the showing you care? You highlighted that just now in what you're sharing with us, but let's do a little bit of a deeper dive into that. So what's going on there with respect and care?
Yeah, I think it's the number one issue. So I have a list of values that are important to me and my employees, and treat everybody with respect is number one on the list. And you say, well, why is that one number one on the list? Well, because if you treat people with respect, right, then you start treating them as a human being, right? Their ideas are important. Their concerns are important. Their worries are important, right? So when you respect somebody, like a spouse, for example, or your children, when you respect them, you're going to listen to them. You're going to treat them properly. And so I think a lot of the problems we deal with workforce management deal with when leaders don't respect the people that work for them, or people don't respect each other in the workplace. And so that leads to all sorts of problems in terms of creating a winning culture. So starting off with the idea that we win through respecting each other, and that we understand, just like my time on the submarine, that every sailor is critical to the mission. And it's the same thing in our businesses. Every person is critical to our mission, right? And just because you're an entry-level person and maybe you're wrapping insulator around a current transformer, maybe that's the easiest job that we have in the plant. But guess what? If you screw that up, you could cause a major disaster in the field where something could explode and destroy some equipment. So every job is critical to the mission. And every person deserves respect. And I think that's a great place to start. And sometimes we think that, well, I've got a bunch of call center people. These are just phone jockeys. Well, guess what? Those phone jockeys are talking to your customers every day in and day out. And I would argue they are more important to your business than the guy in the corner office, because they're physically talking to your customers every day. So when we start to recognize that the people actually adding value to our business, that are actually turning raw material into parts, or talking with customers, or making a cup of coffee for our clients, those are the most important people in our company, not the person in the corner office. And I think we got to get over ourselves as founders and CEOs.
So amazing how if you get beyond the title of what's really important, because titles can be very misleading. And one of the things that we speak about is one of our favorite quotes here at Deep Wealth when people are going through our flagship program, our 90-day Deep Wealth Mastery program. When the team works, the dream works. And that dream could be growing your profits today and down the road as we focus on having some kind of liquidity event or a business exit. But you have to have the right team in place and the right people around you. Otherwise, it's really all for naught. And so, as you share that with us, and thank you so much for sharing that with us, you're doing a lot of interesting things, podcaster, author, Peak Demand, your company, of what you're doing out there, Made in America. Absolutely love that in terms of the story of what's going on there. Why don't you share with the audience, well, what's going on with Peak Demand, of who you're serving, what's going on there, and how you've taken these leadership principles and the difference they've made in Peak Demand and your stakeholders, your customers, your team members, and everyone else in between?
Yeah, I think the genesis for our company became when I had some co-founders with me, and we kind of looking at the industry itself, and we were seeing the way most utilities are treated by the big suppliers in our industry. So there are essentially two large suppliers which have the lion's share of the business, and they treat most customers like a number, right? They love their elephant hunters. So they're going out there to find the large investor-owned utilities, and they want to land these big accounts, and then they wine and dine the purchasing manager of these big accounts, right? But what I noticed and what my co-founders noticed is that the little guys, the small municipal utilities and the co-ops were sort of being ignored because they were smaller customers and they didn't have necessarily the resources they didn't have the professional supply chain, they don't have the professional engineers. And so they were often treated just like a number. And we said, well, there's an opportunity there. What if we provided world-class service to the smaller utilities and be able to give them short lead times, be able to give them technical support, be able to help them solve their problems, and really make it easy for them to acquire these very complex products. And so that's what we did. We targeted sort of the smaller utilities, and we worked with municipals and co-ops. And what we found was they responded really well to that value message, where we're helping them basically solve problems that are difficult for a small utility to solve just because they don't have the resources. And so, yeah, so it turns out that not only did they respond well to our message, they were willing to pay a premium for the products and the service that comes around with it. So we found like an ideal customer set. So instead of hunting elephants, we were gatherers of small game, I guess, small game hunters, I guess. And it's worked out really well. And what it means is that though I have to have a technically competent team, they have to be able to answer the phone on the first ring. They have to be able to answer technical questions. We do a lot of training with our customers. And so, yeah, so we took the role of we sell the parts and the components that you need, but we do it in a way that we support you and your business. And so I think we took a different approach. And the idea was that we wanted to be a different kind of supplier. We wanted to make acquiring these difficult parts much easier. And so that's what we've done. And that's what my team does every day.
It's so amazing how when you really authentically go out there, see what the pain points are, and then address it in a way that it just works, customers will come to you, even though you're up against, I would imagine, your competition massive in terms of their budget and probably across the country, maybe even international in terms of what they're doing. And relative to them, in their books, you're a rounding error, but you're really making a difference out there of how you're approaching things and what you're doing. And that's what I love really about the whole entrepreneurial spirit and how you're approaching that. And so, again, when you're looking at what you're doing at Peak Demand or what you're doing with your team, how much of that goes back to your Navy days in terms of what you learned? Probably, I would imagine you saw leadership that you liked and probably leadership that you didn't like. But is there a link? Is there a tie between the two?
I think so. I look back at my corporate career. One of the jobs I loved the most was my first manufacturing plant, and I had 140 people. And I just absolutely loved it because with 140 people, a crew of a submarine is right around 155, right? So it was like a submarine crew, right? And I felt really comfortable in that kind of role. When I moved up in corporate, I had larger and larger teams where I had more than 600 people working for me. And that was fun, but I really liked being in a smaller group. So I like the idea of being an entrepreneur and having a smaller business. I really enjoy that. I know my employees very well. I spend a lot of time on the shop floor. I would say that my employees see me as much as my sailors did in the Navy days because I'm always around, I'm talking. I know how to do every job in the plant. Mentally, sometimes I'm drained. And so in the afternoons, I'll just push my chair away from my desk and I go out and I work on the line for a while. And we tell stories and we joke and we laugh. The community in my company is so much a crew of a submarine. We laugh together, we worry together, we talk. And so we have very genuine, authentic relationships out on the shop floor. And that's what I love about it. And I recently have a young intern, college intern. He's actually a student in my class, and now he's an intern in my business. He was saying that he's interned at a number of different companies, and he just loves working at Peak Demand because it's just so much of a fun place to work. I say that we take our jobs seriously, but we don't take ourselves seriously. And I think that makes it a fun place to work. If people left my company, they can get more promotions, more money, more bonuses, international travel. I can't offer any of that. But people stay with me for years and years because they like the atmosphere. They like the culture. They feel like they belong to something and they feel like they're doing something that's bigger than themselves.
And it's interesting that you mentioned that because survey after survey has shown the same thing. It really comes back to culture, that people will either stay in a company or they'll leave a company, go to another company. You would think money is at the top of the list, is actually towards the bottom. What's the leadership like? What's the vision of the leadership and the company? How's this culture? And that's really what's keeping people there. So speaking of leadership, speaking of culture, you had an interesting stint where you were going out and you're really the rainmaker. Okay, Jon, this company is near bankruptcy, fix it. And so you're going in there and fixing that. And I know every situation you'd be right to say, well, Jeffrey, every company was different. Everything that I did in the company was going to be different from one to the other. I did not have the same playbook. That said, though, one of my favorite questions in this kind of situation is it like an 80-20 principle or Pareto's law? Yeah, you know what, Jeffrey, even though it was different industries, different companies, the same 20% of these actions or lack of actions created 80% of the challenges that these companies face. What would you say to that? What were some of the patterns that you were seeing when you were this rainmaker to turn these companies around?
Yeah, what's interesting. So I often say that a crew brings a ship to life, and I think people bring our plans to life. And I think it's always been about people. And one thing is like when I come into these businesses, what I found was usually the people didn't know what was going on. Like, why are we losing money? What's happening? And there was a lot of finger pointing. There was a lot of us and them attitudes throughout the business. So one of the big things I had to do was bring everybody together, basically get everybody together, make sure everybody was on the same page, that they understood our current situation very well, like how difficult our situation was. Like, we may have to close this business. I mean, having those frank discussions, but on the other side, giving them hope, like, here's a plan, here's what we are going to do to turn this situation around. So again, it's not sugarcoating it, giving them the true facts, but also this is how we are going to turn it around. So Napoleon famously said that leaders are dealers in hope. And part of our job, part of my turnaround situation was giving them some hope. Here's how we're going to do it, but I need your help. And I think enlisting them in the support of the business. I'll give you an example. At my first manufacturing plant, I noticed there was a big us and them difference between the people in the office and the people on the shop floor. And the people on the shop floor didn't know what the people in the office did, and the people in the office didn't know what the people on the shop floor did. Everybody sort of stayed in their own world, and the only place they met was either in the break room or the bathrooms, and that was it. Otherwise, everybody sort of kept separate. And so I was trying to figure out how to bridge that gap. And I created a system or a process I called Fridays on the Floor. And it became something that I adopted through all my businesses. And so what it was, for half a day on the first Friday of every month, I would work on the shop floor. And every month I would rotate to a different department and I would take note of what was going on. Where were the procedures wrong? Where were the tooling wrong? Where were they having parts problems? I would learn a lot about the problems, but not just from a management perspective, but from the ground up. Where are they dealing with problems? And I remember the first time I was working on a shop floor and this one employee was hammering this part with a mallet, but the mallet was so worn down that it didn't look like a mallet. And I asked him, I said, what is that? And he said, it's a mallet. And I said, well, what's wrong with the mallet? He said, well, it's really old. And I was like, why don't we get a new mallet? And he said, well, the people in the office are really busy. I don't want to bother them. And I'm like, that's when I realized that everybody was sort of dealing with their own problems and they were just getting by. And we had to make the problems that people had on the shop floor more aware to the people who can make a difference. And so instead of just doing Fridays on the floor with just me, and so actually this was a lot like if you've ever seen the show Undercover Boss. This was sort of similar to that, but this is long before Undercover Boss ever made it the airwaves, right? So then I just said, it's not just me, because I would come back from these trips and I would tell my management team, we got to do this, we got to do this. And they would look at me with blank stares like, you're gone crazy. Rennie's gone crazy. What I realized was that they weren't experiencing what I was experiencing. So we made it mandatory that every first Friday of every month that everybody in the management team would work in different places on the shop floor. And then after the 4 hours, we would meet in the conference room. We'd bring in pizzas and we'd say, what did we learn? And then we started attacking all these problems and things that we knew were problematic. And that it was sort of like almost overnight that people recognized that we were listening, we were caring, and we were making a difference, and we're helping them be more successful. We were removing obstacles so they could improve their performance. And so everything turned around in a matter of 6 months, 9 months. Productivity would pick up, quality would pick up, customer complaints would go down, on-time delivery everything was getting better in these businesses. And so, but it was a matter of us listening and being able to respond and react. And so the role, I think, of leadership is to remove the obstacles that are in the way from our people being successful. So instead of being the guy in the corner office where everybody has to bow to and support, it's just the opposite. I'm the one that needs to go out there and remove the obstacles to help my people be high performers. And that's the main thing, was to sort of engage the workforce in turning these businesses around.
Wow, I absolutely love that. As you're talking about that, you're taking me back to my e-learning company days where we would have everyone in the company, particularly the leaders, they would rotate through the different departments, particularly through our technical support department. This was the front lines. They were answering the phones 24/7 because we wanted them to do two things. One, to empathize with support of what was going on and were the things that their department was doing that was adding unnecessary work to the department. And then during our busy times, they'd be like reserves. So instead of going out and hiring all these extra people, we'd call up the reserves, the embedded reserves, we call them. They would go into tech support and they'd help out. And I suspect you probably saw the same thing. When they did that, there was a new camaraderie that
Yeah,
developed from that. It went to a whole other deeper level. There was more of an appreciation, dare I say, respect of, my goodness, I never realized that it was quite so hard. I thought I had it hard until I was in this position.
that's
You
it.
couldn't pay me to do that. I really respect the people that are doing that. So I love how you're doing that. So when you had everyone start to do that and follow your lead, you did that first. I love that. What were some of the, I'll call it the spillover effects into the culture that you saw?
Well, I think the biggest thing was unity. So we then realized that can we kind of, the name of my second book is called All in the Same Boat. We literally got all in the same boat together. Like we realized that we're not, I used to say all the time, the enemy is outside the four walls. And it was reminiscent of my days in the submarine. The enemy is outside the hull, right? And it was a reminder that everybody inside the four walls are critical to our mission. And so I don't want to hear you talking about blaming marketing or blaming sales or blaming quality or blaming production. So the blame game goes away. We have to solve the problems. The enemy is outside the four walls. And the other thing too is one of the things that I think was helpful was helping people understand what they did. So when I first went out on the shop floor, when I started manufacturing, I would ask people what they did. And they say, well, I plate this part, or I paint this part, or I grind this part. And I would say, well, then where does it go? What does this part do? What are we making here? And people didn't really connect what they did to the bigger picture. So the other thing that I was able to do is sort of connect their work to something really big in the world. So in my first plant, as an example, we let them know that, no, we were making circuit breakers in that plant. I said, well, you're not plating a part, you're not painting a part, you're building a circuit breaker and you're helping keep the lights on. So you're helping keep hospital lights on and your kids' elementary school and in the supermarkets. And we, in the office buildings downtown, we connected them to a bigger thing, which was we keep the lights on. And I think it was almost like, again, there was a sense of pride with the team that they realized that they weren't just here to make widgets or to make parts. They were here to make a difference in the world. And that was to keep the lights on. And then it was like, oh, our job is really important. This job is essential for our society, for our state, for our city. I think connecting them to the bigger picture, that's the job of leadership, is to let people understand, because people want to be part of something that's bigger than themselves. And I think that's our job, is to let them know how their work makes a difference in the world.
It's interesting. And we've actually been talking about this, but I'll come up very specifically to it. So, in I Have the Watch, I know we're bouncing around between the different books here. It's interesting. I don't know if this was deliberate or it's just how I'm seeing this, but I love how I see one chapter really builds on the next chapter. So, towards the end of the book, you talk all about, okay, stop being a jerk. And then from there, you're going immediately into building an unstoppable team. And I know for most entrepreneurs, yeah, I want that unstoppable team, but unknowingly, they're being a jerk and they're not going to get that unstoppable team. I would just love your insights of what you're doing at Peak Demand or in your leadership programs, or even what you saw in the Navy about the being a jerk part and the unstoppable team. What would you want us to know?
I think it's a big thing with entrepreneurs. I interview a lot of entrepreneurs on my podcast. And so one of the areas that we struggle with as entrepreneurs is letting go, right? So we become good because we're smart and we have an idea, or we're very good at one or two things. And so we start our company, and a lot of times we're solo entrepreneurs and we have like tight control over everything. And we have a hard time letting go, right? Because that gives us value. That's what we feel important to do. And that's why many entrepreneurs complain. They never can take any time off. They're always so busy. I can't trust anyone. And the people that work for them hate working for them because they never get the opportunity to have the ball in the fourth quarter. So because the CEO is always stepping in, or the founder or whoever is always stepping in to save the day. And I think just the opposite. I think especially young people, they come to your company, they have a degree or they have some experience, and they want the ball in the fourth quarter. They want to be given an opportunity to do difficult things. And so when we don't give them those and we give them menial tasks, go get me coffee, I'm the smart guy, you go keep my coffee cup filled, then they never get to reach their full potential. So I'll give you an example. I have a marketing manager who's working for me. He's relatively young, and we're working on a new brochure. And he said, well, how do you want the brochure to look? I said, I want it to look just like you want it to look. And he said, well, I don't know what I want it to look like. I said, you know our customers, you know what they want, come up with something really creative. And here, work with our intern, who was super great with graphic design and everything. Work with our intern. You guys figure it out. And he keeps coming off. It's like, how about this? What do you like? I said, I don't want to make this decision. I want you to do it. because I want him to get the opportunity to learn, to struggle, to try to find the right answer. And I don't want him to get the answer from me. And I think I know what the answer is. I've been doing this for 30 something years, but I don't want to solve it. And I think when we do that, when we empower our people, we give them the ball, they're going to become bigger and we can become smaller. And then we can take those vacations and then we can relax a little bit and know that I have other people in my business that are just as capable as me.
As you talk about that, and I couldn't agree more. In the back of my mind, though, I'm thinking of so many entrepreneurs that are in the Jeep Wealth community when they first started going through the program. We speak about this and we hear things such as, well, how can I really set them up for success? Or I've tried this before, it didn't really work. I'm hesitant to do it, or they're really going to drop the ball. I'm going to lose business. I'm going to lose a client. And we're going through all those things. And then I'm just making this a hodgepodge of a question for you, but I'll
Yeah.
throw into that, John, that I've seen some owners not delegate, but abdicate. Okay,
Mm.
Johnny. Okay, Mary, here you go. Just go figure it out and just go do it. And they leave it at that, not really checking in or providing that mentoring or that coaching or that
Yeah.
support. So, in your experience, how is really the best way to approach this? What should I be doing to set someone up for success, even if they don't cross the finish line quite the way I had hoped? What does that look like to get them off to the right path?
Yeah. So I think one of the things I learned in the Navy is that you can delegate authority, but you can
Mhm.
never get delegate responsibility. So what
Yeah.
does that mean? So it means that when we're doing a project like this, we give our people full authority to get the job done, right?
Mhm.
So, and then, but if something goes wrong, we're there to back them up. So the responsibility still lies with me. So to make sure, so that brochure, it better be right, and I'll be the final say on it. But I'm giving them the authority to make a lot of decisions. So what ends up happening with a lot of bosses, we give people responsibility, but we keep all authority ourselves. So we say, you're responsible for get this done. And if it doesn't come out right, you're fired or we get rid of you. And so, but we don't give them the authority to actually make the decisions to get the thing done. So we screw that up. And so what I would say is delegate authority, but then you have to retain responsibility. Make sure that you do it. The other thing is, okay, guess what? If they screw it up and things don't go well, you have just learned a valuable lesson. And they learned a valuable lesson. And so this person is not yet up to speed to be able to do this particular task. So either it's a training issue or maybe the person's in the wrong job, but you've achieved another important data point with your employees. You've learned something together. And you may find, as I found, is that some employees say, you know what, you gave me this task, I didn't really like it. I didn't really like calling customers. I felt uncomfortable. I'd rather be in the back doing the QA checks. I really feel more comfortable. That's the kind of thing I want to do in my career. So you learn some things. People come to you and say, well, I want to be a salesman. Okay, go sell. And then they say, I didn't like it. Right. But if you never give them that opportunity, they're maybe sitting in the back in QA, say, I never get a chance to sell. I want to sell. I want to be a salesman. And so they're complaining all the time and no one ever listens and they never get the opportunity. I think if even with failure, you learn a lot. And so I think that's one of the things I learned in the Navy, which was they gave us opportunities to fail in a controlled manner all the time. So
Mhm.
we would stand these watches called junior officer of the deck. And junior officer of the deck was you had a real officer of the deck who was qualified and knew what he was doing. Then it was you, right? And so they gave you the watch and then everything would go wrong. So they would throw all sorts of drills at you and they would do it to the point where it was impossible. You could never get it all done. And so eventually they would stop the drill, then they would secure the drill, and then they would take me off into another room and say, what did you learn? What went right? What went wrong? So it was controlled failure. So you had someone right there watching you, making sure that if anything went wrong, we've got it. But we want you to fail so that you can learn because failure is deeply emotional. And we have to give people the chance to fail so that they get that feeling of, ooh, I never want that to happen again. So that's where you learn lessons is through failure.
Couldn't agree more. And as you're talking through that, I'm looking at my team's journey, my journey. And as much as I love success, and John, I know you love success as well, my best teacher, for better or for worse, for better, was failure. It was through failure, that's where I learned, okay, this didn't quite work out as planned. Why? What went wrong? Let's make sure that doesn't happen again. And so often, particularly today, and we'll talk about this with social media, and we're seeing one snapshot out of probably 10,000 pictures that someone's only curating the one. Everything's successful, everything works. They just wake up out of bed and they roll out of the door and boom, they have that huge success. Well, it doesn't quite work that way. It seems that we've lost the North Star of, Yeah, you know what? You're going to go out there. Things aren't going to work. You're going to learn from it, but you're going to pick it right back up, apply those lessons, and try. And you'll try again, and you'll try again until you do get it. And it's something hopefully that will get back into that North Star. But it's interesting that you talk about that. And I would imagine, John, and you can tell me, Jeffrey, look, off base or on base,
Oh,
but I would imagine that for your team, particularly the new recruits that are coming in through the company, they're trying something. Hey, didn't work out. John, didn't work out. Don't ever want to do that again. The confidence that they must have and the trust. Okay, I can speak up in this company and say, I don't like something or I don't want to do this, and they're going to respect me. So I'd imagine that's the gift that keeps on giving in terms of your culture and the dynamics that's going on with the team. Thoughts on that?
yeah, no, it's exactly right. So there's a high level of ownership because they've given the opportunity. I hired a new plant manager recently, and he says to me, "How do you want it laid out?" We were talking about this one particular line. I said, "I want you to lay it out the way you think it should be laid out." And it was like, he looked at me and I was like, "You're the plant manager. I want you to be a plant manager." And so he laid it out in a way I never would have come up with. And quite frankly, we can put a lot more production through our production line because of what he did. Now, if I had told him what I expected or wanted, I would have missed out on this kind of innovative way he looked at the production line. Like he was a newcomer and he looked and he said, "Wow, I think we could do it this way." And I was like, "Oh," so he blew my socks off. And I think a lot of times we think we're the smartest person in the room. And I think we are not. So our people will surprise us often with innovation that we wouldn't have come up with on our own, especially when we give them the ball. We said, "Hey, I want you to lay it out the way you want to lay it out and not me." I've been doing this for 30 years. I'm set in my ways. I've seen so many things fail that I have this weird view of things, and you're unbiased by that. So, and I love that. And it happens to me throughout my entire career is that when we give people the ball, they're going to surprise us with solutions that we never would have come up with on our own.
Absolutely. And I'm wondering, John, when you're putting someone in that decision making role, okay, go do this. Are you setting up big picture wise the outcome that you want? I'd like to achieve this.
Yeah.
And you figure out, so here's the what, you figure
Yeah.
out the how. Is that more or less how you're doing that?
Yeah, that's exactly right. And that's where we came about it because I was saying that we've got to get the line set up to do on this particular one, 3,000 units a month. I need to be able to get 3,000 units out of this line. And that was the challenge. And so I think you're right. The boss, the owner, the leader has got to set the goal. And then the other thing we do is we set boundaries of what our expectations are in terms of the way we treat each other, how we want the culture to be. So we set the barriers and we set the goal. But I think then we have to let go. And I came up with this phrase one time after interviewing so many different entrepreneurs. I said, you have to let go if you want to grow. So if you want to grow your business as an entrepreneur, you have to learn to let go. You have to get other people empowered. You've got to give them the ball and you got to let them run with it. And I think that when we do that, I often say the collective wisdom of a team is so much more than the ideas of just one person. So we've got to bring those collective ideas together to solve the kind of problems that we deal with in the work environment today.
Couldn't agree more. And to that point, and again, you may say, Jeffrey, on base or off base, one of the pushbacks that we often get, well, Jeffrey, I'm world class in this. If I'm doing this 110%, somebody might come in and only do 80% or 75%. And our viewpoint is that's terrific.
Yeah.
Fire yourself, get someone in there because that's all they're going to be doing 24/7. You're now, as the founder, the business owner, or the leader, you can go on and do really other areas that you're strong in, where your superpowers are that other people can't. Thoughts about that?
Yeah, no, that's exactly right. Again, if you get somebody that's running at 85% and you can let go of certain things, then yeah, you can spend time doing other things. I mean, we should be working on our business, not in our business. And I think too many entrepreneurs are working in their business. And I think we need to be able to have that opportunity to be able to step away. And I think people say, "Oh, I talk to a lot of entrepreneurs. I could never take a day off." I take time off all the time. I feel
Yeah.
very comfortable with my team. Now, if you can't take any time off, and if one of your listeners is listening in and say, "Oh, I can't take any time off as an entrepreneur," then I don't know that you're empowering your people enough.
Yeah. Hey, Houston, we have a problem here if that's the case.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And let me ask you this before we start going into wrap up mode. There are some who say, well, John, that's great. And that's been your journey. Times have changed. We have technology now. We have AI. A lot of these things are just outdated. And I suspect you have a different answer. So it could really be from any of the books, from I Have the Watch to Deep Leadership. As you look at where we are today and where things are heading in the business environment, next year, the year after that? How do you find these principles are stacking up?
I think with technology, with AI, with globalization, technology, it really comes down to people. It still comes down to people. I think we want authenticity. I think we're starting to see AI and different things. Oh, that's an AI response. We roll our eyes, right? People want authenticity. They want other people. Guess what? Your customers want people too, and your employees want to deal with people. So I think I often say that leadership is a people business. It comes right down to it. If we want our business to succeed, we have to be all about the people that are running our business or are in our business, because our customers are people and they want to hear from us people. They don't want to hear from technology. They don't want to hear from an AI. They want to hear from a person. So I think as much as the times are changing, there are some universal truths that people do crave other people and they crave authenticity. And I think that even with all the emergence of technology, we're still going to get back to those basic people tenets.
That's what I love about best practices that you very openly and kindly share in all of your books or even your podcast, Deep Wealth Nation. Again, go to the show notes, check out the podcast, listen to the Deep Leadership Podcast. Yes, I know deep wealth, deep leadership, but listen to the Deep Leadership Podcast. It's all in there. Best practices are best practices. They go across industries for a reason. They work and they tap into human nature and all those other things. And in so many ways, are really timeless. Well, Jon, let me ask you this. Before we go into wrap up mode, I know there are so many questions that I have that I didn't have a chance to ask. Is there one question that I didn't ask that you wanted to address? Or is there a message that you want to take out to the Deep Wealth Nation, or even some kind of a theme that we haven't really spoken about that you want to get out there?
Go back to the idea that a crew brings a ship to life. If you think about it, before we commission a ship, we put the crew on board. And before that crew gets there, it's just a hunk of technology sitting in the ocean, right? It's useless. It's a cold hunk of steel. But when people come on there, they bring that ship to life. A crew brings a ship to life. Our people bring our business to life. And we can't do it alone. And you need people, and you need people, engaged people, if you want to bring your business to a high level. So I think coming back to the principle of leadership as a people business, it's really about how are we taking care of the people that are taking care of our customers. It's really that simple.
Well said. Hey, if we take care of our team, they're taking care of our customers, they're going to take care of the business. They're going to take care of ourselves with our goals, our dreams, the lifestyle that we want. And we're so interconnected. It's absolutely amazing when you look at it from that perspective. I just love how all the stakeholders, when we do the right thing with the right people, that's where the magic really happens. And that said, Jon, we're going to go into wrap up mode. It's a tradition here on the Deep Wealth Podcast. It's really my privilege and my honor where I ask the same question to every one of our guests. It's a really fun question. Let me set this up for you. When you think of the movie Back to the Future, you have that magical DeLorean car that will take you to any point in time. So, Jon, it's tomorrow morning. This is the fun part. You look outside your window. Not only do you see the DeLorean car there curbside, the door is open, is waiting for you to hop on in what you do. And you're now going to go to any point in your life. Jon, as a young child, a teenager, whatever point in time it would be, what are you telling your younger self in terms of life lessons or life wisdom? Or, hey, Jon, do this, but don't do that. What would it sound like?
Yeah, I think that it probably would be that things work out, that time has a way of working things out. And so I think most of my life I've been an impatient person, and I've always been pushing, and I think you can enjoy the ride as well. Things over time will work themselves out. And so don't forget to enjoy the journey along the way. And so don't just always be pushing for the next level. It was definitely some advice that came from an employee one time. He said, Jon, you always push, you never stop and take a break at any sort of point and look back at how far we come. So I think over the years, I've learned to sort of stop and take a look and enjoy the progress. So don't forget to stop and smell the roses every once in a while in your life.
I love that. Hey, enjoy the journey knowing that things have a way of working out. Absolute gold, actually not gold, platinum in terms of what you're sharing. And Jon, you shared something that most entrepreneurs don't realize. It took me a very long time to realize what you just mentioned right now, that our fulfillment, our happiness doesn't come from what's next. It comes from looking back to realize where we started and where we've come. Because if we're always looking forward, we'll never catch it. It's impossible. But when we look back, we can really see the progress that wow, look where I started. I didn't know anything. And now look at where we are all this short time later. It's a small little flip of the mindset, but it makes all the difference. And I love that you're sharing that as well. So thank you so much for sharing that. And before we wrap up, if a listener, they have a question for you, they want to reach out, maybe they want to get some coaching, maybe they want you to come in and speak to their team and their company, where would be the best place online to reach you?
Yeah, everything is at jonsrennie.com.
Perfect. And again, Deep Wealth Nation, it's all in the show notes. It's a point and click. Well, Jon, it's official. Congratulations. This is a wrap. And as we love to say here at Deep Wealth, may you continue to thrive and prosper while you remain healthy and safe. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
So there you have it, Deep Wealth Nation. What did you think? So with all that said, and as we wrap it up, I have another question for you. Actually, it's more of a personal favor. Did you find this episode helpful? Have you found other episodes of the Deep Wealth Podcast empowering and a game changer for your journey? And if you said yes, and I really hope you did, I have a small but really meaningful way that you can actually help us out and keep these episodes coming to you. Are you ready for it? The dramatic pause. I'll just wait a moment. Drum roll, please. Subscribe. Please subscribe to the Deep Wealth Podcast on your favorite podcast channel. When you subscribe to the Deep Wealth Podcast, you're saving yourself time. Every episode automatically comes to you. And I want you to know that we meticulously craft every one of our episodes to have impactful strategies, stories, expert insights that are designed to help you grow your profits, increase the value of your business, and yes, even optimize your post-exit life and your life right now, whatever you want that to look like. And every time you subscribe and a fellow entrepreneur subscribes, it's a testament to how together, yes, we are changing the social fabric of society. One business owner at a time, one liquidity event at a time. So don't let the momentum stop here. Subscribe now on your favorite podcast channel. You'll never miss an episode. You'll be the first to hear from the top industry leaders, the innovators, the disruptors that are really changing and shaping the business world. And maybe you're commuting, maybe you're at the gym, maybe you're taking a well-deserved break that we spoke all about on this episode. The Deep Wealth Podcast, it's your reliable source for the next big idea that could literally revolutionize your business. So once again, please hit that subscribe button, stay connected, inspired, and ahead of the curve. And again, your next big breakthrough moment, it might just be one episode away. Maybe it was even this episode. So all that said, thank you so much for listening. And remember, your wealth isn't just about the money in the bank. It's about the depth of your journey and the impact that you're creating. So let's continue this journey together. And from the bottom of my heart, thank you so much for listening to this episode. And as we love to say here at Deep Wealth, may you continue to thrive and prosper while you remain healthy and safe. Thank you so much. God bless.